And actually, Mr. Brian, would you be so kind as to change places with me? I want you to be in front of the camera so they can get all of this power tonight. You understand what I'm saying? So you come on over here, and I'm gonna be the co-pilot tonight. There we go. All right, let me grab this link too so we can get it shared out.
I'm sharing the link.
Let's see. All right, I can see us on YouTube. We are good to go over there. So let me grab the link and share. And as you guys are coming on, if you're hopping in, tell us where you are. Make sure that you're hitting that like button and that share button, helping us spread the word. Y'all know I'm serious because I'm sending it to my personal banker. Let's see, who else are we sharing it to? All right. All right. So we're going to get this party started. Again, as you're coming in, take the opportunity to click through. If you're seeing this on Facebook, click through to the YouTube video because we cannot see your comments if you don't do that. If you're on Facebook, I'll be moving back and forth to try to see some of the comments from my live stream. But let us know where you are. Let us know how you're doing. Share it, tag your peoples. All right, so Mr. Brian,
Yes,
you're
ma'am.
in the hot seat with us.
I'm in the hot
You're in
seat.
the hot seat with us. All right, you ready?
I'm ready.
So we're gonna kick it off. I'm gonna tell you who I am, and then I'm gonna turn it over to this magnificent guest that we have tonight. I feel like he can do the justice on telling you who he is. So I am J Bay, also known as the Healing One, also known as Jasmine, the owner of I Am Healing One LLC. And as you know, we are a private practice wellness and mental health group. We are here to help you thrive, whatever that be. And y'all know that this is the Sip Podcast. We don't have anything to drink other than some water, and that's all right. Grab something yummy to drink, something juicy to eat on, and take a sip with us. And tonight we're going to focus on the power part of the sex, intimacy, and power. I am so freaking excited. So I'm gonna kick it to you, Mr. Brian K. Rice, also known as the community engineer. Did I get that right?
You did get that right.
All right, go ahead. Tell them who you is.
Let's just share a little bit about that community engineer thing.
Yeah.
A few years ago, when I arrived in Ensley, that was in 2018, and then 2019, I had an interview with Eunice Elliott with CBS. I think she was CBS 42 at the time, and we did a segment. And during that segment, she called the segment "The Community Engineer," and I'm not sure how that conversation took place when we were interviewing, but that was the first time that it was ever mentioned publicly. And for people who don't know me, my background is I'm a mechanical engineer.
Okay.
I went to Alabama A&M University, graduated from Ramsey High School in Birmingham, Alabama, and I've traveled, around the country and in other countries just through engineering. And it was always my dream to find a way to come back to Birmingham and figure out a way to make a difference.
Okay.
And with that, I'm going to share something that's the reason, the spark that brought me here.
Yes.
There was an article. There was an article in I think it was 2000. It was April 29th, 2010. And if you look at it, the article is called "The Killing Years."
Mm.
And in this article, you see roughly 100 faces. And out of those faces, let's just say the majority of them, 90% of them are African Americans.
Wow.
I'm sitting in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I see this, and I'm just so motivated and so discouraged at the same time. But I said I'm gonna find a way to go home and see what I can do to make a difference.
Yeah.
So this was a trigger while I was working on other stuff when I was living in Charlotte, North Carolina. I grew up in the North Birmingham area in a neighborhood called North Smithfield Manor. It's actually an unincorporated Birmingham, and so it's right behind off of Daniel Payne Road. So that area right there. So that gives you a quick overview. So what are we gonna talk about today? What are we gonna talk about?
I feel like I want to focus on the power because I think a lot of times we as individual people feel powerless, right? Especially when it comes to community challenges, community issues, and even political challenges and issues. We feel like our vote doesn't matter. We feel like our needs don't matter. And what I see of you as I was scouring online, just reading up, some of the efforts that you've had over the years, you look like to me you are working to empower the individual so that the individual empowers the community. And tonight, I want you to tell us a little bit more about those efforts. I want to understand how me as J-Bay or how Benny or how any of us as individuals can unite more effectively to help support your efforts and our own to make a difference in our community.
We'll focus on the power part because there's a higher power enemy. I never know when my voice will drop and you'll hear the tears and the emotion coming out of me because I'm extremely passionate about what I'm doing in our communities.
Okay.
And I'm gonna start with my father. My father taught me something. I think I was either in high school or college, and he said, "I don't understand why so many boys feel like they have to hang around other boys." And that was teaching me independence. That was teaching me to believe in myself, to stand alone if I have to.
Okay.
And being in Inslee, being in Birmingham, Alabama, I have been standing alone. Just imagine one person is suing the governor of Alabama, the mayor of Birmingham, the president of UAB, the Jefferson County Board of Equalization, several of the top corporate development companies in the city of Birmingham who make up the largest developments, the Caraway development, the Southtown development. Um, and and there's over 60 something defendants over my two cases. Ooh. And because of what I'm standing for, it has been a challenge. And I've told both judges, I have sought like crazy to find lawyers to stand up for economic rights in our communities. And I cannot find any that will stand on the front lines. There are some that, that will say, Brian, hey, this is what I recommend you to do, or, et cetera, et cetera. But standing on the front lines. And I always think of Angela Davis. When she was in that courtroom back in the day, she had lawyers helping her, but she was on the front lines representing herself in court. And, so I do not wish my experience on anyone where you feel like you have to sue a city, a county, a state, all at the same time with very limited resources. But because I believe in the supernatural, I just do the natural. And however long it takes every day, I will study all day. I will study all weekend. And I know the show where you say sex, intimacy, power. Because I understand the power, I literally have put aside the other parts of my life. That's a sacrifice.
Yeah.
To fight this fight, to be exposing over $600 million of tax fraud. This is a very dangerous situation, and I understand it. But I am going to stand up for our communities because places like downtown Inslee and Birmingham, like Hooper City, Wylam, Pratt City, 5 Points West, you see a little bit over there, But even when you leave Birmingham and you go to a Knoxville, the east side of Knoxville, or you're in Charlotte and you go to West Charlotte, or you in Milwaukee and you go to North Milwaukee, or you wherever you are, you see the exact same things. So I come back to my hometown and I said, why are we not developing? I thought it was a very simple reason. All right, maybe it's just credit. Maybe it's people not choosing to go there and seek financing to develop in the communities. But then this is a stat that is extremely concerning. In Inslee, African Americans own over 50 buildings, and it may be 75 to 100 buildings. In the last 40 years, I've only met one African American to ever get a loan to develop their properties. It's the largest area where African Americans own that amount of commercial real estate, not just in the city of Birmingham, but in the state of Alabama. And in 40 years, I've only met one African American who's gotten a loan from a local bank to develop their properties. Only one. So if I as an owner or my neighbors as owners cannot get loans or cannot get financing to develop their properties, we cannot renovate our spaces. Mm-hmm. If we cannot renovate our spaces, then we cannot create spaces for businesses to come there. If we can't create spaces for businesses to come there, we cannot create jobs. And if we cannot create jobs, then we cannot support the family, the mother, the father. We can't create summer jobs for the kids. We can't, solve the biggest issue in our community, which is an economic imbalance. If we solve economics, it will be a major pillar in the fight, that we must build up. We have to build that up. Absolutely. So for me, I am diehard on the front lines of how do we bring justice to a place like downtown Inslee.
You got me ready to cry. Wow.
All right. Any quick thoughts? There's so many different directions we can go. But I asked you earlier before we started. Yeah. What are some of the concerns that you have when it comes to our underserved communities, or whether it's the crime that we always see, or whatever it is. Yeah. What are some of your concerns?
So I live in Birmingham, and I moved here 11 years ago this year. Not a place I ever saw myself moving, right? But I took a job here, and I've enjoyed it. I clearly have, because I've been here. But what I've noticed is I bought the house that I'm currently in some years ago, and when I bought it as an investment property. I had a friend that knew some different things that were happening, kind of told me what was happening, so that's how I settled on that particular house when I was looking, right? And going through a divorce and life changes, I moved back in it recently to rehab it and do some things because it had been previously rented out. Now, all these years, though, whether it was rented, whether I was in it, I've been there. I constantly check on the property. I've constantly checked on the neighborhood, driving through, talking, trying to find things out. In all the years I've owned my house, the first couple of years, I couldn't even told you who the HOA president was. Mm-hmm. And finally, one of my neighbors told me, and then I could never actually catch him. When I tried to go to neighborhood meetings, I would show up because they would have it posted online. I would show up, nobody be there. Well, life happens, you deal with things. And for a couple of years, I let it fall off. And when I recently moved back in, I said, let me get back on this. Still couldn't have told you who the HOA president was. So I reached out to a friend of mine who's fairly involved. She checked with her HOA president, who then told me, still couldn't get the woman on the phone. As circumstances happened, I ended up downtown meeting with some different people in the mayor's office. They knew who the HOA president was. Oh, they raved about her. And I finally asked them a question. I said, I mean no offense by this, but how are you raving to her about me? And I just told you I live in the neighborhood. I ain't never met this lady. So is she really that great, or are y'all just friends? Mm. And, that's how I began to look at it like, oh, okay. You hear about it all the time, but when you're actually in the conversation and you realize, oh, y'all on some bullshit. You understand? And I understand that there's a risk saying that on camera, but that is what it is. That's what I took away from that you would all sit here in my face and tell me how great this person is when I just told you about the crime in the neighborhood, when I just told you about the trash in the neighborhood, the dilapidated houses that I've been asking for help to try to get addressed, when I've told you about all these issues And where's my HOA president? Because I don't know who she is. Where is she in the midst of all of this? And that's not to say that she's not trying to do anything, but I can't tell you what those efforts are being a part of this community when I'm not seeing them, I'm not experiencing them, and you as an outsider are telling me how great it is. And I think that's what a lot of us are dealing with when I talk to my different friends throughout the metro area as well. It's the same issue replicated over and over and over again. And what I see is though that same group of people, y'all just told me y'all got this big budget for all these neighborhoods and all these HOAs. Where's it going? Because I don't see it in my neighborhood. Where's it going? And so I hear you, and I feel all the emotions because I can't even imagine how lonely and isolating that is.
Mm-hmm. And just to add a little bit to that, for those who are outside of Birmingham and those who live in suburbs, typically we'll say HOA, but inside the city of Birmingham, it'll be a neighborhood association or something like that, just so we, connected. But at the end of the day, very similar format. This whole process. So 2018, I buy my commercial buildings in downtown Ensley. Literally after 8 or more months of asking for them to order the appraisal. They finally ordered the appraisal and they appraised my buildings at $0. I said, so you're trying to tell me a pack of bubble gum or a single piece of bubble gum, that recycled can on the side of the road is worth more than my 8 buildings, and I still have tenants in the building. And I'm bringing that up for a reason, tying it to your stuff. And yes, I have a neighborhood association president there, got a community president there, and we have them all across the city. But there's zero people that have, that are in positions of leadership of that capacity that have ever spoken up for me. So, my plight is just like yours. And so one thing that I did over the last 3 to 4 years, when I realized no help was coming, I literally just started studying city policy, state laws, federal laws, and so I could tell you that citizen participation program that you're talking about with the neighborhood presidents, that was created in 1974, I believe. And I had to understand what their role was. So we want more from them, and we are sure that they are not doing enough. But then, that's one level of government, because they are paid for by some city funds. But then when you start looking at the other layers, whether it's the community development office, or whether it's the economic development office, or whether it's the city council, or whether it's the mayor's office, whether it's the county commission, whether it's all these different agencies at the state level. So I start studying what their roles are, because if I can't show in law what that they have a duty to me, I can't sue them. But if I can show in law where you have a duty to me, and you are choosing not to help me or choosing to oppress me, I am going to take that law and I'm going to walk in front of that courtroom and I'll stand by myself if no black lawyer in a civil rights city is willing to stand up for a real civil rights issue. So I have a real issue with anyone who walks in that 16th Street Baptist Church and they keep claiming civil rights in Birmingham. I have a real issue with people who walk in that Civil Rights Institute and they're talking about civil rights in Birmingham. Most of us have no idea what our civil rights are. One of the things that I learned in this process is in 1870 and 1871, the most used law today in federal court was created based on civil rights, that was created then based on what the KKK was doing to us and what the state was allowing them to do across the country. And that law is the number one law that we have to use. But we don't understand that a public official has a right to us because we never read Section 1983 in the U.S. Code, or we never read Section 1981. We don't understand, how those apply to us. Unfortunately, we are so focused on civil rights based on race. We got to focus on our rights just based as citizens. If we can't even, we got to get those too. And unfortunately, those who are in leadership have been slowly changing the laws to make sure it's extremely hard for us to fight. So we have to understand the laws. The one thing that I will say that I had no idea about was, and I feel sad, I mean, disappointed as an American. I did not understand the power of the U.S. Constitution. And I don't think most of us understand what the Constitution is about. And, what is it based on? Equal protection of the law. Whether I'm speaking about the 14th Amendment or I'm speaking about the Fifth Amendment, we start talking about the due process of law. What does that mean to us? If we have no idea what that means, we can never sue the state or the federal government in federal court if we don't understand at a minimum, those two laws. Yeah, I know a lot of times we talk about gun laws, et cetera, but we have to understand what their rights are to us, what they have to do for us. And I've had Black lawyers talk about me for standing up in Birmingham. I've had Black radio show hosts talk about me for standing up in Birmingham. I've had Black bank presidents talk about me for standing up for my $0 appraisal in Birmingham. I've had Black city councilors talk about me for standing up for my $0 appraisal in Birmingham. I've had a Black mayor talk about me for standing up and actually interrogate me in my buildings over my $0 appraisal. I've had county commissioners talk about me. I've had congressmen talk about me. I've had a lot of people talk about me because I have a $0 appraisal. Somebody appraised my building less than this pen. If I can't develop my property, we can never improve our community. So anybody who stands against me, I'm gonna do all I can to fight you and get you out of my god doggone way. Because $0 is wrong on every level. You try to tell me a penny is worth more than my building. But so those who are watching, this thing triggered me, but I was triggered before I got here because I came back to Birmingham because I saw these homicides on a regular basis. And I said, we have to do something in our community. So if I want to come to Inslee and figure out a way to renovate some buildings to put, whether it's lofts on the top level or art spaces in one space or entrepreneurship development space, another space, or whatever it is, or co-working space, whatever it is. And anybody who is standing against me, I'm going to fight like crazy because I'm going to fight for my community because that's what I'm about. So you're going to take the engineer in me and I'm going to dissect every god doggone law I could dissect and figure out how to fight for my rights. Because it has been proven that Black lawyers and white lawyers have not decided to stand up for economic injustice in our country at this level. And we must stand for economic injustice. We must. So just want to just share that passion. But it's Black people today who are standing on the front lines with the white people today stopping me. But they're not just stopping me. They were stopping Inslee before I got to Inslee. They're stopping all my neighbors. And most people think my fight is against the mayor. The mayor is the pawn on this chessboard in the lawsuit. He must understand that they are using you to destroy our community. And it's unfortunate that he allows himself to be used. I used to be in that circle with the mayor. One of my closest friends is in his inner circle. The chief, operations officer used to hang out with him. There's a lot of people in that circle I used to hang out with. But the moment I came to Inslee and tried to improve a Black community was the moment Black leaders started hating me. So please don't tell me y'all are about civil rights. And so this is a very serious thing. So I mean, there's a lot of different ways we can go, and I'm gonna change it up a little bit because I actually brought something here for you today.
I see your book.
I brought some. Okay, come on, Ben.
All right. So let me ask you this. I know you were speaking about how you have a lot of Black politicians, lawyers, and etc. They started to turn against you when you started to move toward into your community. Do you think it's will for ignorance, or they simply just don't know a lot of these laws that they so-called stand behind?
So you said willful ignorance.
Yeah, but willful meaning that I know, but I'm a play student.
All right, so I'm gonna use.
Just don't know.
I'm gonna use the federal laws and so you had the willful part, right? You know, so it's another part that go. So it's definitely willful. To me, it's intentional. So these are things that you have to prove when you're in federal court. When you're suing somebody in state court, you're proving, oh, it was a careless error, it was negligence, it was a mistake. But when we bring this thing into federal court, we got to show that it's willful. And so one of the terms that I learned in this process was called deliberate indifference. Same thing what you just said. The other one that I learned was called reckless disregard. The other one that kind of surprised me, we call it as regular people turning a blind eye. You know, so but the court, they call it the ostrich instruction. What in the world is the ostrich instruction? You know, the ostrich gonna put his head in the sand and act like he don't see nothing around him. So if you can prove that they are choosing the ostrich instruction or deliberate indifference, then against a clearly established law, we got to fight in federal court. You know, so first of all, everybody knows that you can't create a $0 appraisal. So just on the bank situation, we know that that's willful, intentional, deliberate. You could call it oppression. I actually thought about using the 13th Amendment in my lawsuit because you have taken my complete right to the ownership of property away. And you only can do that for a slave. So if I go back to the 13th Amendment, I'm saying you took that away. But I started studying and I said, no, I don't want to argue that right now. I argue some of the other stuff that's easier. Now, when it comes to the other part of your statement, do they not know? I believe most of them do not know. There are several lawyers that I've talked to. Think about it. The majority of our lawyers, they practice personal injury law, bankruptcy law, family law, go get an LLC kind of law. Get some real needed laws.
Very simple thing.
But but you got to think about it. This is what I believe. I'm not a lawyer. This is what I believe. I went to school. I got all this debt built up. I got to get my money to pay off this debt. And then I get used to just doing something that really didn't improve my community. I got used to just supporting me. There's a guy who is known in the streets. He came to me one day, or he called me one day. He said, Brian, and this is not against all lawyers. He said, Brian, lawyers are like drug dealers. And I said, what'd you say? What you say? And this guy known in the street, like drug dealers. He said, drug dealers make their money off of fiends. And those fiends keep coming back. And he said, a lot of lawyers need to pay certain bills. So they need people to pay that $500, that $2,000, that this and there, so they can be supported. And he said, I have been in situations where I know they don't have my best interest in mind. And they are not studying the law, or they're not fighting the law. This is a street guy telling me this. And I said, And then another guy who in the area, and I'm gonna use the term. He used Bumpy Johnson, but I used the movie that Denzel Washington was in. What is it? American? What's the American Gangster? And I use that as an example. We as African Americans, we look up to certain parts of the movie, and we look up to certain parts of the drug dealer. But a guy said the other day, he said, a drug dealer can ruin the lives of millions, or ruin the lives of hundreds of thousands, and help the lives of hundreds with giving out turkeys, taking care of Christmas bills, giving somebody a job, or, helping somebody out. And those people become the advocates for how great of a person this person is. And they ignore the fact that he ruined the lives of millions or hundreds of thousands because they good. So this guy, he broke it down. He said, we as African Americans, unfortunately, we think so individually and not collectively. If I think individually, I'm gonna say how great that man is. But if I think collectively, I'm thinking about what he did to the greater community. So so in this situation with this $0 appraisal that took place in Islington, it caused me to look up other stuff. I've repeated this. My facts don't change. Mayor Woodford met me in my buildings on 10/13/2019 with the Economic Development Director, Josh Carpenter, with the City Councilor, John Hilliard at the time. Met me in my buildings on this Sunday. And for over 45 minutes, they essentially teamed up and interrogated me over my $0 appraisal. Okay. But it was at the end of that night and all the conversations that happened in that day that I said, why was a mayor mad at me for asking for help? And it took me more than a year, more than 2 years in some cases, and more than 3 years in some cases to find all the connections that I found in federal court. And so we in Birmingham, we see all this development in its pockets in Woodlawn, in Lakeview, Avondale, UAB, Southside, downtown. We see pockets in 5 Points West. And then we see a little bitty half a street in Bellevue Heights. But we are 70% plus black city. And we see almost nothing helping the most deprived and those who make up the top 3 homicides in the country. We see nothing that's addressing those issues from a preventative level. But I found a document that showed that you all created a plan to make sure federal resources for 10 years go away or don't come to Inslee, Pratt City, Wylam, half of 5 Points West for 10 years. Everybody knows Inslee is the most talked about place when it comes to any issues in the city of Birmingham. But you take federal resources away for 10 years, but nobody knows that if Brian don't get a $0 appraisal and then find it. And then we go and look downtown and we see all these developments. You help all of these developments where they are the affluent. But what did you do for the underserved and the distressed? So a lot of people are going to talk about the great things he did down there or in the center of the city. But I'm talking about in the deepest part of the city where almost everybody tell people not to go. And that's Inslee. That's the number one place when somebody come to Birmingham, they say, don't go to Inslee. But when I'm there and I'm driving these streets, and I said, the reality is there are really not that many people here on this side of Inslee. It's the least populated census tract in the entire city. And I think it was the last census, it was 700 and some people that's living in this one census tract between J.O. High School, Village Creek, and downtown Inslee. All the other census tracts have like 2,400 and 4,400 people. So are y'all intentionally making this area so depressed that you're clearing out homes as much as possible? You're forcing the owners to only fend with themselves with the little bit of cash they have. So if their building burn or they can't get insurance, whatever it is, it's completely decimated. And if it's completely decimated, it's going to be super easy 1 year from now, 1 day from now, or 10 years from now when somebody else come in. But my issue, these killing years are still going on. We are not doing anything to improve the conditions. So I love the development downtown, but y'all gonna win anyway because the ball is rolling. But don't take away development opportunities from us for the next 10 years and then cover it up. It's wrong. It's wrong. So any other thoughts, Benny?
Well, I mean, of course, it's a gazillion of them.
Go for it.
Because when I first found out about your movement, man, it was so inspiring. Because it's one of those questions that actually been kind of answered that you've been seeing the remnants of for years. You've been saying like, damn, why is so many of these neighborhoods looking this way? Is it because the people don't care, or are they intentionally depressed? And the answer to the question is intentionally depressed. Because when I look at just all the neighborhoods you named and more, it's been the same thing as long as I've been there. And I've been there over 4 decades.
You keep going, man.
And so it's interesting, man. And you know what's even more interesting though is that so many people don't believe it. They think you really attacking these politicians personally, but if they actually just go through, look, and see what's going on from the video you posted a few years ago, because I watched that on the regular. We watched that here like it's damn bad boys Friday.
Let's think.
Because I feel like it's necessary. And then a lot of times I like to turn it on when nobody knows exactly what it is. Yeah. They just hear bits and pieces, then they'll see the mayor pop up, and they'll see different people pop up, and then it catch their attention.
All right, let's talk about that for a second. Every city I've ever lived in, I was popular. I mean, invited to everything. People, when I left Charlotte, they said, "Why are you leaving? You can run for office." And why are you leaving? But it was because of that picture and pictures like that brought me back to Birmingham. Most people think my issue is with a mayor. No, my issue is with the underserved condition in our communities. And I was already prepared to fight the bank. It was the mayor who got mad at me for asking for help. And then I realized there was a connection between the bank and the mayor. And then I realized there was other connections. So the mayor is not my focus. My focus is getting resources to my community. Is to get them to my community. So one of my pastimes is studying not just history and not just Black history, but studying microfilm for the city of Birmingham and studying old documents in the city of Birmingham. Because I'm like, why are our communities like this? And how long have they been like this? So the other day, I'm not gonna pick the one from 1949 yet. I'm gonna pick the one from our first Black mayor. So this is maybe a few days before 1979. I think this is 2 days or so before he is sworn in. And the mayor-elect says he believes that if downtown revitalization efforts prove successful, bringing new life to the commercial areas of outlying neighborhoods such as Woodlawn and Ensley would be easier. So, 45 years later, Ensley has always been the topic of every Black mayor, and we've had 5 Black mayors in these 45 years. But ain't no resources ever come there. So, so we get distracted by their words, and I'm no longer distracted by your words. I'm like, if I can prove that it was willful ignorance, or if I can prove that it was deliberate indifference, or if I can prove that, and you intentionally oppressing my community, it's time to sue you, because you are messing with my life. You're messing with my liberty, and in this case, you're messing with my property. So back to the random thing. Some people say, "Oh man, he got a personal issue." To have 100% of your income removed, it is very personal. To have people try to oppress it, to be in a city where no news agency will share the problems in Ensley, but they will share the dreamer that comes to Ensley. All of them shared my story when I got there. But when they realized that I was willing to stand against the people stopping me, none have shared the story that's about mail and wire fraud. That's about, bank fraud. That's about redlining. That's about all this stuff that's in both federal lawsuits. We just had John Rogers fall in the last few days for mail and wire fraud and obstruction of justice. We saw Larry Langford fall years ago, but they always tie back to mail and wire fraud, even though it might tie to a kickback. We've seen the Jeff Germany fall, whether it was a kickback. We've seen all these people fall because they're getting in office and they forget that this is a public service is a public trust. That's what they say in one of those federal documents. And they forget that they are the servants for the people. I didn't think I was coming here to fight, but if fighting for economics can improve my community, I'm gonna fight like crazy to do it. But
it's generational too.
It's generational.
A lot of people think it's just for now, but people don't realize if you miss these resources for 10 years, we'll probably suffer for easily another 50 or more. Because once killing starts, that's a hard thing to stop, because now there's retaliation, back and forth, no money, back and forth, and then you look up, man, we don't want a whole nother generation or two.
And I'm gonna have fun for a second. Just going to history. A lot of people have never seen where we at. How can we see it? Either one. This document or this page is a clipping from a February 1917 article, and it's about advertisements in Birmingham. It says colored homes, small down payment. Why not buy a home? Blah blah blah. When you can pay for it, small monthly payments. Hooper City, North Birmingham, Powderly, Inslee, Pratt City. All right. You see another article like this in 1937 or posted. Colored homes. You see Inslee again. You see Pratt City again. You see East Thomas. You see North Birmingham. And then you see, don't know how well you can see it, but it says 100% GI loans to move to Roebuck. And it got white pictures on there. So most of our black soldiers who fought in World War II could not get 100% anything. But white folks were getting 100% loans from, from the GI Bill, during that era, all the way up to roughly 1968, until they created some of these fair housing laws. But then if I go back into history, I would see that in 1933, 1934, they created the idea of redlining. They created the Fair Housing Administration. They created the Homeowners Loan Corporation. And then you will see like $2 and $4 billion of funds going to being distributed in the country for white people to buy homes in 1934. And if you use that today, I don't know if that's almost $1 trillion. But then when you look at history, you're like, we couldn't get those loans because you all created maps where blacks could not live, and those loans would not go to those areas labeled red on the maps. So the fight that I'm dealing with today, you created a map where the federal resources are going to go. And I can't get those federal resources because you created a map based on fraud and not based on, and then it was based on race. They were just blatant with it. Today, you cover it up and it's based on fraud. It's the same thing, so it's the same fight. And that's 80-some years, 90-some years ago, but it's the exact same fight. And African Americans were not able to get these loans all across the country because they based it on race. I don't care if you base it on race, base it on fraud. If you doing something intentional to make sure I don't have my rights, I'm gonna fight for my rights.
That's right, and you should. And be honest with you, man, I think that whether you know it or not, you were chose for this.
Thank you.
Because it's a plethora of people across the country experiencing this. But I only heard of maybe one other case other than yours, where a guy was pushing the same way. But as many, like you said, black attorneys, black intellectuals, black politicians that we have, that fight should be a lot bigger.
It should be a lot bigger.
But I think a lot of people, they just kind of settle. The old statement, I'm good, I got mine, you get yours, which is an awful way of thinking, because we really do supposed to be thinking about the collective. Because the few people who do have it, you're at risk of not having it, dealing with what they call, quote unquote, the have-nots.
Got it.
We have a comment before we dive back in. We have a comment over here. Somebody saying live on Facebook. Amanda, thank you for sharing. Awesome speakers. And then, sure, No lies told. Even Stephen Wonder can see what's going on in Birmingham. So I want to go back for just a minute. You said earlier that you're basically sacrificing every other part of your life to take this path, right? And that has to go beyond just solitude or loneliness or feeling like an outsider. Can you talk about that for a minute? Because I want to highlight that in my thought process, I think there are others that want to do this. There are others that want to speak up, that maybe want to join you in this or figure out how to stand behind you. And maybe highlighting that gives them some courage to figure that next step out.
So I use this. My very popular in every city I've lived in. Popular in Birmingham, just popular for the reason that people are trying to suppress. Um, and yeah, I've sacrificed other parts of my life. And going back to what Benny said, he believed that I've been chosen for this. I never planned to be single at I'm 43 today, be 44 in a few months. Never planned to be single. Uh, and I understand now why he prepared all this in me. If I had a daughter, a son, a family, a wife, am I gonna put 16 hours a day to the side so I can study the law? I will not do that because I'm putting my family first. Uh, when I lived in Charlotte, I think it was 2010. It was July. I remember writing a quote down. I didn't understand this quote at the time relating to today. This 2010. I said I thought about adopting a child, but my vision grew. And then I thought about adopting a city, or area that I could change. And this is my fight, but this is our fight. And the more people realize that they can stand up for this fight, the easier the fight will be for me and whomever else is fighting it around the country. Um, but I know for a fact I don't wish this on anyone to see to know good friends and you're not letting the relationship grow because it's dangerous. One, Brian Stevenson said the same thing, who's over the Equal Justice Initiative in Montgomery. Emory Jackson, one of the first Black news reporters in Birmingham or editors of the Birmingham World, said the same thing. I'm not intentionally putting this on hold but this is a very serious situation. And our communities and the state of our community is in a very serious situation. Um, but I do know the next step in my life. I know people say, Brian, would you be interested in running for this position or running for that position? When I get to victory, whatever the victory he allows, my next step is family. And I'm not about to put this above family forever. But this is a season where I am on the battlefield, and I will do my part in this season. But I do not wish uh, the loneliness. I do not wish it. I've gone to Inslee many days, and I'm the only one on an entire block. One of my friends said, Brian, you live in an abandoned building. Well, it ain't abandoned. I live there. Well, the rest of it's abandoned. But it's lonely. But I wouldn't put a wife or daughter or anything like that. And something that we never really haven't talked about is I didn't grow up in Inslee. I grew up in North Birmingham in an unincorporated area. To be honest, it felt like the Cosby Show. All Black families, 95%, married families with kids growing up. I was zoned for Fortendale or Gardendale, but I lived in the city of Birmingham. But Daniel Payne, Bacarva High School, Parker High School, Ramsey High School was all closer than Gardendale High School. But they had to pick the closest Black area for us to be zoned to. So I lived in an environment that was awesome at that time. I have not gone 2 days without hearing gunfire of 6 shots or 8 shots or 15 shots. I have not gone 2 nights without hearing that. And sometimes it's multiple times a night, whether they shoot in the air or shooting at someone. Um, I have recorded on cameras, killings. Um, I have recorded shootouts where ain't nobody get killed. And I'm like, there ain't no way in the effing world I will put my family in this condition. So for those who don't understand what it's like to risk it all to improve a community, just step back. Don't get mad at the person for trying to make a difference. I know you may say I didn't do it the right way. There almost ain't no right way when they take all your rights away. I am trying not to use unlawful ways to do it. But if I was an insane person or even a sane person, I probably would use unlawful ways. Because to take away a man's life and the ability to provide for his life is enough for a man to fight for his life in unlawful ways.
Very true.
To take away a man's liberty, take away his property, is enough for a country to fight other countries. And it's enough for a black man to fight for his family, fight for himself, to fight for his community. But I am choosing to do it the lawful way. But I'm gonna stop right there for a second, because I did bring this book here for you to have. It's called Inclusive Systemic Economic Injustice, Corruption, Exclusion, and Oppression in My Hometown. How White and Black Public Officials Injure Black Communities Today. I published this in October of 23. And my letters to the FBI are the next to last chapter in there, unedited. What I sent to the FBI asking for help in Israel. The concerns that I've seen related to real estate or economic injustice are here, covering the last 45 years of Black mayors, covering the last 120 something years of Black communities in Birmingham. And I'm giving this to you, but there's a page in here where it's page 83 is where I made a list of all the public officials that have been elected in the city limits of Birmingham since 1968. And you see 2.5 or so pages, 4, 5 pages of elected officials who have been elected since 1968. And there is not one Black community that I could say is healthy and balanced in Birmingham. There is not one area that I could say this is ideal. This is ideal enough.
See, we ain't got no Black community. We got Black neighborhoods.
We got Black neighborhoods.
Community, you have businesses and everything to support it.
Mm-hmm.
But most communities that we live in, should we stand somebody else's shit?
Yeah.
You gotta leave out and get all your resources from other places, which ain't good. I think every neighborhood should be able to sustain itself, and you are barter and trade amongst others. But I don't think we should have to do that, and I do believe it's intentional. Right now for the fight, boy. I'm with you, man.
Yeah, thank you, man. And so one of these articles somewhere on this page, on this table, is it was when Kincaid got elected, or no, he was in office, and he was running his second election, and it says development is an election issue. Everybody's talking about economic development in our underserved community. How long are we going to talk about it? So the one thing that I'm going to point out in my city that bothers me is city councilors, county commissioners. They regularly give out turkeys. They regularly give out Christmas presents. I don't want no turkey. I want my community to have jobs. I don't want Christmas presents. I want my mother and father to have jobs or be able to have a great business. I don't want you to be able to say, be proud of giving us turkeys. Be proud when you give us jobs. Be proud when you help create businesses. And in Birmingham, I was the one that posted it. Birmingham released, they didn't even release it. They completed a racial disparity study in 2022, March of 2022. And it showed in some areas, like professional services, Blacks are receiving 0.87% of about $14 million in contracts. I didn't say 1%, I said 0.87%. So we're not even getting 1% of the professional services. Now let's look at that differently. If the Blacks in the 70+% Black city are not getting 1%, that means 99% of somebody else is receiving the money for professional services that are planning out their activities in our communities. So somebody else is planning out our development, and we ain't getting none. So that's a real issue. And in some of the other areas, we were at a point, I think it was 0.33% or something like that, real close to that. And there was another service category in there. I think it was supplies or something like that. And that's 0.33%. And it was out of in that category, I think it was out of about 60 million. So if we ain't getting no money, we can't have no jobs. We can't grow no businesses. We can't have nothing but crime because we all frustrated from trauma. We all frustrated. That son frustrated, that daughter frustrated, the mama, the daddy frustrated, everybody frustrated. We ain't getting help on the Black people. We ain't getting help on the white people. We ain't getting no help. So my life don't matter to them. And now I have adopted the fact that in a lot of cases, my life don't matter to me. So I'm going to get it how I live. And if I die, I die. And that's how a lot of us are thinking. But we have not shown them another way. We have not created another way. And for those up top who want to talk about me and stand in the way, as long as you stand in that way, if I find any fraud tied to you, I'm putting it in a federal lawsuit, and I'm going to make sure it's locked in history to make sure it's tied to you for the future. So the next Black person coming behind you don't do the exact same thing. You know, nobody knows what it's like to file over 2,500 pages with the FBI, with the Department of Justice, with the IRS about what's happening in specifically in downtown Enville and Birmingham. You know, but we're gonna put the paper out there, and we're gonna see if Black or white people or anybody standing up for our community. And right now, ain't nobody stood up, and it's scary, it's lonely. I don't wish this on no one, but we got to change the tide at some point if we're gonna improve our community. We got to change.
Well, I'm not a real big biblical man, but I do believe a lot of the things that's in there where it say the meek shall inherit the earth. Now, for years, I always wondered what that meant. But as I get older, I'll be 45 this year. As I get older, a lot of that stuff starting to make a lot more sense. So the meek shall inherit the earth, man, your work is not in vain. Because believe it or not, you got fellas like me that will support you out loud, on stage, everywhere else. But you got some people who, that's just going to support it because of the position they in. And I can kind of understand that too. But then you got some people, they simply don't know. And you got some people that don't give a damn to the third power because of affecting their bottom line. But that old statement, the meek shall inherit the earth, when it all changes, hey, I'm looking forward to that day. This is going to happen sooner than later too.
Got it. So let's get back to that power part. One of my favorite books, I'm not going to call it not the power book. That's a book that a lot of people talk about. It's a book that's just called One. What is the difference one can make? And when we think about biblically, we're talking about that one lost sheep. He would sacrifice the rest to go get that one. So one can make a difference. And this is a scenario that a lot of us have dealt with, and definitely those in prison. My mother made a statement the other day, and she was saying, you need to read this book called Redeeming Justice. It's about this guy who went to prison and he became his own lawyer while in prison, and he was able to win his case. And because I had said recently, the only person that I can compare my fight to right now, and their fight is even more oppressed than my fight, is that person in prison. They are in prison. I am in a financial prison. And I am going to fight like crazy. I'm going to stay like crazy guy, this financial prison. And but there's a lot one can do. I think about Dred Scott. I think about people like Frederick Douglass. I think about these Warrens. I think about these Plessy versus Ferguson. These are Warrens. And I think about Arthur Shores, who was the only black lawyer, black attorney in the state of Alabama practicing in court from 1937 to the late 1940s. So from slavery to 1937, there was no black attorney in the deep South in Alabama practicing in court. So we was getting railroaded left and right. Today we got thousands, and we getting railroaded left and right. So you all gonna have to get off your high horse and say, this type of fight, whatever this is worth fighting. I'm gonna get my bills over here, but every so often I gotta pick a fight that's worth fighting to make my difference in life. And because we got thousands and ain't no help. There was one, and there was very little help. So, stand up and do your part. There's power in all of us. There's a guy who's a bona fide activist, and a lot of people talk down about him. He's a radical. He's a true radical. A guy named Kamal Africa. But I appreciate the different things that people bring to the table. That man will stand in front of a museum of art, stand in front of UAB, stand in front of anywhere, and create flyers that I have nothing to do with, and just telling my story in these flyers. I've never asked him to do it. Don't revise his stuff, anything like that. And he just goes and do it. And but there are people, and there are women who have stood and protested in front of the Department of Justice on my behalf. I can't do it because of the legal reasons. So there are people in the background, but there are people with power in the front grounds that could take this to the next level and end this and get to victory faster. It's unfortunate that I am fighting in a fight that might create the next John Rogers or might create the next Kwame Kilpatrick. That is not the focus. But if I can't get my rights by asking, I can't get my rights by whatever, I'm going to keep uncovering evidence. And unfortunately, we might have the next Kwame Kilpatrick in Birmingham, Alabama.
That makes me think, and I had to look it up to make sure I was going to say it right. One of my favorite verses from the Bible is, "Having suffered violence, and the violent take it by force." And
is that a King James or a Gideon version? That's how I get
it. It don't matter.
It don't matter. It don't matter. But the reason I liken that verse to this, and the reason it's been one of my favorite verses always has been, number one, I don't like bullies. And I think most of us don't. But a lot of people are typically afraid to speak up because, again, what do I have to lose? Especially if you have a family, you have kids, you have a business, you have something, of value to you that you don't want to put in harm's way. But I look at life that way. Most things that we want come through some type of blood, sweat, tears, and labor. You know what I'm saying? And the more valuable the thing is that we're trying to accomplish or experience, sometimes the more blood, sweat, and tears we have to be willing to put behind it. And I look at the fact that we as a Black community, we tried peace. We've tried rallies. We've tried marching. We've tried sit-ins. We've tried all the ways to be peaceful as people, as communities, as neighbors, as whatever. And that typically has not worked. What we see historically over and over and over, and the pattern that works is when we become violent. Now, that doesn't mean that you got to pick up your baseball bat and go knock somebody upside the head. Violence sometimes is using your voice on Facebook or social media. Violence is sometimes speaking out and joining in the unity of the voices. It's whatever it is. It's doing a poetry slam. It's doing whatever, right? But we have to be willing, and I call myself into this as well, because sometimes we don't know what to do, so we get burned out and we just stop trying. But we have to be willing to call our individual selves onto the carpet and recognize that what we are asking for, we're asking not only for basic rights and basic freedom, but we're asking for more than equality as well. We're asking for not only a seat at the table, we asking for some goddamn help. You understand what I'm saying? And in order to ask for that and be constantly denied, we have to then recognize, if they're not going to give it to me, am I willing to take it by force? That's what I hear when I hear you saying this. I've got to figure out, how can I, as an individual, empower the people in my circles to unite their voices? And I think that's the charge that I want to put out there to everybody after listening to you tonight. Now, I'm not saying to put yourself in harm's way if that doesn't make sense for you. I'm not saying to get out here and act a fool. What I am saying, as I've shared that verse with you all, is to challenge yourselves to think on, what does that mean for you? What does that look for you? Because you're not just fighting for you. You understand? You're fighting for me. You're fighting for Benny. You're fighting for every single one of us in this community, because it could have been any one of us in this community, in the neighboring communities that got their $0 appraisal. And the audacity that somebody showed up and wrote that and then submitted it and it was accepted. There's so many layers to have to unpack. But the simple fact is, they were able to do it because they've gotten away with it for so long that most of us have given up. And we're not speaking, and we've been leaving it to the one. We've been leaving it to you and certain solitary individuals, thinking they got it, they good, they all right, while we're safe at home, keeping ourselves out of the limelight or out of the public view, not recognizing, because we've left this mantle on your shoulders. Maybe you were in fact chosen. I do agree with that. But that doesn't mean that you're supposed to do it by yourself.
Right.
You understand what I'm saying? And the only reason I'm not breaking down in tears is because I'm like, well, I don't want to take away from what you're saying. I intentionally switched seats with you because I wanted you to be right in front of the camera. I wanted you to run this and get everything out that you could possibly get out. And the reason I wanted that is because it's calling me to the carpet. I'm gonna be the first one to hold my hand up and say, I've been doing it the same way. I haven't been speaking up the way that I could have. I haven't been doing as much as I could have. And so I'm throwing all of this out there to say, guys, as you're listening to this, I've been seeing you all come on the video. Make sure that you're sharing this out. Make sure that you're tagging the people that you know. Make sure that you're commenting to help this reach more people, whether you're watching it on Facebook or YouTube. I'm going to make sure I get the link for your book and add that to the video information so that they can buy copies. I don't care if you don't want to read it, buy it anyway and sit it on your coffee table. Sit it in your business. Buy it as a Christmas present or a birthday present. Buy 10 copies if you can. Buy it for the people in your office. Send this video to everybody that you can think of, because the reason we're trying to have this conversation is that you should not be doing this alone. You live in a city that is predominantly Black, and neighboring areas are predominantly Black. You should not be doing this alone, because none of us have the luxury to let you do it anymore.
Let's go to this, the loan part again. The conditioned mind in our communities. I believe I have seen the conditioned mind where, oh, it's expected to not be able to go to a bank and get a loan. Oh, it's expected to not have, resources in your community. The owners over there in Inslee have gotten used to it, whether they realize it or not, to being oppressed. The owners and the property owners in the surrounding neighborhoods and communities and across the country have gotten used to not having rights. And they're so used to it that it's very disappointing. But I was fortunate enough to leave my hometown, see something else. I saw the same thing, and then I came back, so I wasn't used to the environment of Birmingham anymore. But I saw the same thing everywhere else. But because my eyes got open, I saw something else. So I don't know what you're used to, but you're gonna have to break it.
Mm-hmm.
We all know there's someone in our family that's, they're just not right. Might be the next one to kill somebody. or in our community. And we all know when we drive through certain communities, the resources are not there, the programs are not there, the whatever is not there, the businesses are not there, and that's not just a coincidence. But when our educated move, just like the whites move in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, and our educated follow them, you know, we're going to have a good amount of our community taken away from our community. Um, so, uh, so when I think about the whole thing and putting community first, but honestly, I want to get the victory so I can put family first. Um, and technically, I believe I am, but it's not the way I wanted to do it. Um, but I do know most of my friends are not in positions to take the sacrifice in a way. So I get it, but also don't try to silence the situation. Um, and because across the country we have the same issues. So we all have something that bothers us, and I always believe that if something bothers you enough, you should be the one to do something about it, whatever your something is. And economic development, resources, jobs, businesses, um, the source to income bothers me when we don't have it in our communities. Absolutely. So if we don't have that, we got an imbalanced family. We know there's other things. We know. I also know in Ensley, there's over 40 some churches in Ensley. There's I think over 900 or so churches in Birmingham. None of them are fighting these kind of fights. So when we mention the Bible, they know the Bible, but if we ain't gonna use the conviction in us to fight for something, you can burn that church. Um, and I go back to Martin Luther King letter from a Birmingham jail. He wrote his letter to the white clergy. Today, if I was to write my letter from Birmingham jail, I would write it to the black leaders. He also wrote in the letter from a Birmingham jail, the mindset of the poor black and the individual black who made it. Uh, and he talked about those two opposing forces. One is so used to the conditions that they don't want anybody to come and change it or step in, and then one is benefiting from the conditions. And, they don't want me in Birmingham, just like anybody else. So he was fighting the same people that I'm fighting. Those people who were the successful black people who in that letter from a Birmingham jail, them the people that I'm fighting today. I'm fighting the Jack and Jill types. I'm fighting the leaders of the fraternities. I'm fighting the leaders of politics. I'm fighting our most successful black leaders who have chosen willful ignorance, deliberate indifference, reckless disregard, whether they are a public official or private person, to what's happening in our community because they good. They made it. And because I made it, you should be able to make it too. It does not always work that way. You didn't have the exact same obstacles. You didn't have the exact same family situation. You didn't have the exact same community situation. You didn't have the exact same trauma in your life that mentally screwed you up. So do not try to say, "Well, I made it. He can make it." No, you don't. You don't know what he or she has gone through. Uh, but there is a way for you to make a difference. So I recommend people who are interested in the fight that I'm fighting, which is a big time. It's actually the largest fight for economic injustice in the state of Alabama, in the city of Birmingham. It's the most quashed. That's the word. Most silenced fight in the city, in the state. The diehard Republican groups or journalism groups won't share the story because we got a lot of you know Republicans in the lawsuit. The diehard Democrats they won't share it because we got a lot of Democrats in the lawsuit.
Well, remember, Brian, there's always a back door, a side door. Hey, we got to take the roof off. It'll get hurt. It'll
get hurt.
It'll get hurt.
Yeah. So, but I do recommend anybody who really want a history lesson on present redlining, I would recommend you to go to my website, which is briankrice.com. And, the book is a sacrifice. It's written. The letters from the FBI explaining the redlining are in the book. The other conditions are in the book. And at the very beginning, in the opening of the website, I have 2 links: the Brian K. Rice versus Governor Kay Ivey lawsuit, the Brian K. Rice versus Rachel Riddle lawsuit. Rachel Riddle is she's over the legislative division at the state of Alabama. So she's the top on the legislative side. Governor Ivey's the top executive person in the state of Alabama. And I got a lawsuit against both of them. That's not intentional. Because I actually, me as a black man, I'll say this publicly, I actually like Kay Ivey. I actually like her. And I'm going to tell you why I like her, and I'm going to repeat it over and over why I like her. She is true to her constituents. She stands for her people. My people won't stand for my people. That trait is why I like her. And that's a trait I wish my people had that was in leadership.
Ride with them regardless.
Yeah. And even I love how she turned the tables on the Oakwood situation with the boys basketball team. She came in and stepped in. So we can look at race all the time if we want to, but if you say you about this, be about this. If you're about civil rights, be about civil rights. If you're about our communities, be about our communities. But do not use the word inclusive, equitable, equality, around me, and then backstab me and my community and rig all the funds and send it somewhere else. Because I'm going to fight you for my rights. Because you messing my rights up, you messing my neighbor's life up, you messing up my neighbor's life, and them gunshots that I hear every night is because of you. Because you have taken away opportunity from my community. But in the Brian K. Rice versus Kay Ivey lawsuit, you're gonna see 48 defendants named. You're gonna see everybody from UAB to Randall Woodfin, Corporate Realty to Kay Ivey, and then I broke down their roles. And then at the very back of the book, I put history in there because I love history. I showed in the very back, not the book, the very back of the lawsuit, I showed the first racial bombing in Birmingham, which was tied to race and economic development in Smithfield. And I showed that bombing to prove that what happened in 1947 is happening here in 2024. So there's a history lesson in there. And then for other owners, they say this in court, and I know we're getting ready to close. They got a good little argument, and I smiled at the argument. I know I'm in court, and lawyers will tell me whatever, but y'all lawyers won't stand up, so y'all can say whatever you want to say. They said, "Oh, Mr. Rice didn't own the properties March 2018. He didn't own the properties until July of 2018. So he doesn't have standing to sue us." Yeah. So that was the argument. So between now and April 1st, I have to write on paper my answer to that argument. And so they didn't say that the letter wasn't, fraudulent. They actually didn't address the fact that y'all lied on everything in Inslee. They didn't address that. They addressed the fact that I didn't own the properties on that day. So you're trying to tell me every last one of my neighbors in Inslee, in Pratt City, in Wylam, in 5 Points West, in North Birmingham, in Eastlake, in Hooper City have a right to sue you today because they own property on that day. So that's what y'all saying in federal court. because they owned it and they still can sue now because you just learning of this evidence that you wouldn't have been able to learn before. So everybody in the city around me has a right to sue based on their statement. But I'm going to tell them and tell whomever else, if you poison the river or the lake next to me on March of 2018, that poison didn't go away on March 2018. You contaminated that river. And you contaminated that river on paper for 10 years. And every document you said, we were about inclusive growth, Mayor Woodford. Every document said we're about equity. But if you had told me that document was about fraud, and you would have put the signs up in Ensley, do not invest here because fraud has been removing resources from your community for 10 years. Or if you said, do not invest here because the land is poisoned for the next 10 years, guess what? I would not have invested there. And nobody else would have invested there. You're not about to buy in a contaminated area. Yeah, and you're not about to buy a car if you know that engine is busted and he's telling you that it's good. So I have to find the law that shows that is a weak argument. I can't just say it's a weak argument. I got to show it in the law that that's a weak argument. So it seems like that. And if there's a lawyer out there who want to help, I'm all for it. I do not want to practice, be my own attorney. If there's a person who wants to, picket and protest, there's a group of people that are doing it. Because that's your right. It's a First Amendment right, as long as you do it lawfully. If you want to write letters to your congressman, you could do it. But my congressman has told me, which is Terry Sewell, what I'm fighting is a state issue. No, what I'm fighting is a federal issue, and I don't care if it is a state because you elected in my doggones from my city. So it's weak arguments like that that bother me. So I don't care if you went to Harvard or Yale. If you're gonna use these weak arguments not to help our community, you do not need to be in that position saying you are for us, stand for us. There are people who can write what they call an amicus brief, and you can write a paragraph or 2 pages, and you can send it to the federal judge and say, this is what I think is right, or this is what I think is wrong about this case. This has happened to me. You can write it to the local U.S. attorney. I like stuff in paper because it has history tied to it. But then, and then if you have, I can't even focus on my buildings. I'm spending so much time focused on the lawsuit. I can't focus on that roof leak. I can't focus on economic development because this lawsuit is more critical at this injunction or juncture. But there's a role for everybody, and I think I wrote in the book at the very end, things that regular people can do. So we all regular. I'm regular. I just got effed over, and I cared about my community.
Not by
When they say you're naughty,
Well,
but it's always great to look at it in an humble way. But you ain't regular, man, because even like going back to like I said, the Gideon's battle. Most of the time when the Most High chose somebody, if 1 million people went right and 6-7 people went left, that's an honor, man, to even be in that number because that means you're thinking way outside of what the average mind is thinking and being distracted by sharp suits and great conversation. You actually putting the work in. So, hey, man, I commend you on that because you just don't see too many. Like I said, you can drown your fish quicker than to find a room full of stand-up men and women. So, hey, I commend you, bro.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, man.
I want to make sure that you get a chance to shine some light on this too, because you brought this in here for a reason. And I want to start by saying there should be anger, but not at those who would improve a decaying city.
Ooh, man. So you trying to add a whole new hour to the hour, you're gonna have to come back and chop this up later. You're gonna have to
it's gotta be a part 2.
You gotta chop it up. So I brought an article that I have put in my own frame. It's just a city of Birmingham Birmingham News, Alabama.com article. John Archibald wrote the article. And the title of the article, March 23rd, 2016, Birmingham's failure was not gentrification. It's a white journalist who wrote the article. And so to summarize it, I don't necessarily have to read it. John Archibald said, Birmingham's biggest problem, it is a 73, almost 75% black city. And blacks have not helped blacks grow businesses. That is essentially the summary of it. And that was written in 2016. And he said that's a bigger problem than gentrification. And he went back to the first mayor, the second mayor, third mayor, and it would have been the fourth mayor at that time. So gentrification is a distraction for us. Gentrification happens because we are oppressed, but we got to stop the thing that's oppressing us. That gentrification is the last thing to get us out, but we got to stop the thing in the middle to improve ourselves in that process. So don't get distracted by gentrification. But if there's a policy that's created based on fraud that hurts your community, then you fight against that policy, because that policy might help them people from the outside come in, and it might hurt you on the inside. So you got to find that policy so you can sue them jokers in state or federal court.
So I'm gonna throw your book up here one more time. Is this book available on your website?
It is available on the website. It's available on Amazon. I got a Kindle version and the paperback version. I literally haven't had a chance to record myself talking. I would love to get an audio version, but when you are suing 60-some people at the same time, you really ain't got much time.
Man, I do the all stuff.
Right, we got you.
I do the all.
Thank you.
Yeah, it is gonna be so simple to play.
So simple to play.
I got you. Straight up, I ain't saying go on camera, man.
Yeah.
I like to do that kind of stuff.
Let's get it. So hop on over to briancrice.com, get a copy of this book. We'll make sure that we have the links across the different videos wherever it's been streaming. I know, guys, that it is challenging to speak up, but I've been seeing y'all hopping in and off the live. So even if you don't feel ready to comment, that's okay. What you can still do is help spread the word by clicking the like button, the share button, putting some hearts on the videos as you're watching it, whether you're live or catching the replay. What you can do is hop on over to the YouTube video. We'll make sure we continue to share the links and do the same thing, like the video, share the videos, send the hearts and the 100% and whatever, because all of that engagement helps him to continue to spread the word, helps us to continue to spread the word. And that is a very real, very easy 5-second tangible way that you can help him in this fight. He's listed 5 or 6 other ways. They're in the back of this book. I'll also make sure that I go back through and type them out on the video. Listen, I'm trying to make this easy on y'all. But before you go to bed tonight, take some action. I don't care whether you tell one person about this, take some action. And what do you want to leave them with? Because I know we went a little bit longer because this is an important topic. But if you want them to do one thing before this night is over, what would you ask of them?
Let's focus on power. Me and a friend was having a conversation a couple of days ago, and we came up with this statement. The issue with a lot of the people that I'm dealing with is our confidence is greater than their arrogance.
Ooh.
And you have to believe in yourself.
Yeah.
And if you believe in yourself, even though you cannot see the whole staircase, as they say, and you know something is right, just keep putting that one foot in front of the other. This is almost a 6-year fight for me. That's a lot of years. I could have a kid almost in elementary school, but I have sacrificed that, and I could have another kid, right behind that kid. But I know I could not fight this larger fight at the same time. So I don't recommend everybody to make that level of sacrifice, but find the power in you. And there's greatness in all of us, but all of our fights are not necessarily big fights. But find that things that mean something to you, and stand up for right, even if you got to stand alone.
Man, that's gonna be all good. You're gonna be 52 with a 2-year-old.
It's all good.
So again, your website is briankrice.com. Do you want to share the Facebook link just in case?
You just look me up, Brian K. Rice, as a community engineer on Facebook. I've intentionally not posted a whole lot. That's only because every step I make, they watching.
Yeah.
But I understand it. So you'll start seeing more and more. And I'm hoping those up top do right. But I've been Black in America my whole life, and there ain't nobody really done right about us in my whole life. So I'm gonna fight for my right and fight for the right of those around me. But I hope they do right, but they have not yet.
Well, if you guys have questions, make sure you pop them in the comments. Even if you're catching the replay, we'll make sure that Brian sees them. If you want to reach out to him, go to his website and or comment somewhere on either one of these videos on Facebook or YouTube, and we will make sure to pass it on to you. You got a fan in me now. When Benny told me about you last month, I immediately asked him, listen, I don't know you, but how do we get you in here? Because this is a conversation that has to be had.
Mm-hmm.
It can't just be you continue to stand by yourself anymore. We may not all be in the position to do what you're doing or sacrifice at that level, but each of us has something that we're able to do to contribute, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, guys, I'm going to challenge you. I know plenty of maintenance guys. I know we know plenty of cleaners. I know Benny does. So my challenge to you all before we end this tonight is to consider, even if you're not a person that's meant to be on the front lines, how can you help them behind the scenes? Your buildings need help. They need attention. What is it that you can do to show up and be a part of this to support him in whatever ways you got? I'm sure you need to eat something every once in a while, You maybe not having time to cook with all this on your plate. How can you cook? How can you help clean? How can you do maintenance? How can you fix the roof? How can you do something that's going to contribute to this battle that he's in such a way as to gird him up, but also to be more violent and forceful in your own actions to benefit each of us as a community, because none of us can do it alone, right? One man can put 1,000 to flight, two can put 10,000 to flight. So I'm gonna leave y'all with that. Benny, do you have anything else you want to throw out there before we bring this to an end?
Hey, I'm a rider, a soldier.
Hey, yeah.
Hey, that's all I gotta say on that one, man. Shouts out to Brian K. Rice, because hey, many people won't take that fight. A lot of people think about it, but a lot of people definitely won't be about it. So, like I said, hey, I could be in you, and we ain't just talking.
Thank you, man.
So we're gonna bring this one to an end. Benny, would you be so kind to shut that one down over there?
Yeah, so